Welcome everyone to today's section. So today we are going to be talking about lists, grids, and scrollable widgets. So everything we are talking about is going to be about scrolling through different items in our UI, okay? So in the last section, we talked about navigation from one screen to another, and we're able to create this new screen UI, right? Okay, that's right. We talked about navigation. We also talked about login, creating a sign up login screen. Okay, so if you are just joining us, I would recommend you go back and watch the previous videos, so that you'll be able to catch up quickly and understand what we are doing here. Okay, so I hope you all can see my screen. So I've tried to increase it a little bit, right? So it's a little bit bold. And okay, so for today's class, we are going to be looking at ListView and GridView. Okay, we are going to be looking at dynamic list using ListView.builder. So I'm going to talk about them. And we are going to talk about adding icons and images to lists. And also at the end of this section, we are going to build a simple to-do list app. So with this app, we'll be able to add item, right, to the list. We'll be able to delete item to the list, all right? So those are the two things we are going to be doing. Okay, so later I'm going to give you guys an assignment that you need to work on for the to-do app. So I'll do that by the end of the section, okay? All right, so to get started, okay, sorry. All right, so to get started, let's talk about ListView and GridView. So in Flutter, ListView is a fundamental widget, okay? It's used for displaying scrollable list of items. It can display other widgets as well, okay? And one thing you should know about ListView and GridView is that they are multi-child widgets. Just when remember when we talked about columns and rows, right? Same thing applies to ListView and GridView. So they display items, they display multiple widgets, okay? They display multiple widgets. But the difference now between rows and ListView or GridView is that ListView automatically makes the items to be scrollable, right? We don't need to wrap it with single child scroll view, just the way we did for rows and column in the previous classes, right? So that's the one of the difference, okay? So for list view, it's used when you want to show vertical list of items, right? Just like columns, right? And for grid view, it's used when you want to display items in form of grid, right? Like 3 items in a row and all that in form of grid. Those are the difference between list view and grid view. So just for example, now if you look at your phone gallery, your images, your videos, they are all saved, they are all displayed in grid view, right? Then if you look at your WhatsApp application or like or social media apps, you will see all those items while you're scrolling through feeds, you will see people's posts. Those things are all in list view, right? That's what is they used to render it. Okay. Now let's talk about ListView.builder, which is for displaying dynamic list. We also have GridView.builder, okay? But in this class, I'm going to be talking about ListView.builder. Then your assignment will be to study or do your research on GridView.builder. If you also have any questions, let me know in the Telegram channel. I'm going to put a link in the description, right? So you all can follow in case you're a new user. Or sorry, in case you're a new member here. All right, so for ListView.builder is a more efficient way to create lists in Flutter, especially when the list might be long or when the list is long. It only builds the item visible on the screen. So with the help of ListView.builder, we'll be able to reduce memory usage and improve performance of our application. So, and it also uses a callback to generate each items on demand. So I'm going to show you guys real life example of how you can implement that in your app. So, and this video reader is very useful when you're working with dynamic content. that especially lists coming from a server or database. Okay. So now I'm also going to show you how to add icons and images to the list. We have already talked about icons and images in the past. All right. Then we're going to build our app. So let's get started with this. So as you can see here, we have our previous first app screen. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a new screen here, and I will call this list view, or let's say scrollable. Okay. Then remember, we need to use our stateful widgets, and from here I'll just name it scrollable screen. And remember the first thing I told you, when you're creating a new page or a new screen, you use the scaffold widget because it will give us access to a lot of things that we can work with. So inside here, I'm going to add my app bar. All right, and give it a title. Let's just say scrollable. All right, this is supposed to be a widget, sorry. Okay, what is wrong with me? All right, so now I need to navigate users to this screen. So what I can do, I'll go back to our main.dat. So inside here, I'll create another button. Let me just duplicate this, copy and paste it here. So separate it with comma. And here, instead of next screen, I would say scrollable screen. And I will specify the name of the file that we want to navigate to, which is scrollable screen. And right here, I'm going to replace this class name to scrollable screen. All right, now we can click to navigate to the scrollable screen page. All right. Okay, so now let's move on to something interesting. All right, so one way we can create lists of items, I already told you guys in our past Dart classes and all that. So you can just create list int, right? Let's just call it scrollable, and just we can now specify the items that are supposed to be inside the list. Right? This is a list, but this is in terms of variables to hold items. It's different from the scrollable widget that we want to work with. But most of the time, this is the data holder for the list that we are going to create. Okay, the data are all these. Remember, in our Dart, we use for loop to loop through all these items and then print them out in our console. But in this case, what we are going to do here is to use our list to generate and display those items. So let me say I have a list of names, right? And then the first name is Destiny. The second name, let me just say YouTube. Third, we have Flutter. Say we have that. Say we have subscribe. Okay, just something like this. Just 5 names. So now to display these items in a list using list view, what we are going to do is to have first our body, then you use the widget, because ListView GridView, ListView.builder, GridView.builder, they are all widgets in Flutter. Okay, so we can use ListView like so. You put your parentheses because it's a widget. So now let me show you another thing again. When you hover, you're going to see a lot of properties. You can reverse the list. You can put the scroll axis direction. Currently is in vertical. You can make it to be in horizontal manner, right? Like using a row. Okay. You can also set a controller, a scroll controller, in case you want to know the extent at which the user have scrolled to, right? You can add padding, you can add item extent, right? A lot of things that you can work with. Then we have the children, just like list and just like column and rows, we have children that we can specify all the widgets that we want. Okay, so in this case, let me show you how to display these things manually. So we have our first list. We can create something like this. We can use our for loop. For I in 0, we loop through all the names, right? Then we do I++, increment it by 1, and then we return a list tie. List tie is a widget. The help of list tie is that it gives us access to title, subtitle, and all that. But let me just simplify things here. Instead of using list tie, I'm going to use list tie later when we start building the to-do app. But for now, let's just use our test widget. So I think list tie is better. It's still the same thing as test widget. So I just want it to be clear with spacing. So this list tie automatically adds padding for us. And with list tie, you can put the title of the item and it's a widget, right? You put your test widget. This is me just trying to teach you guys more widgets that are available in Flutter, okay? So if you like it this way, just let me know in the comments, right? Just type something. We can also put a subtitle in terms of list tie, right? We can also put a leading icon, which can, let's just say, circular avatar now. We can add a leading icon. We can also add a button, like we can call this a trailing icon. Let's just say icon button icons dot delete, for instance, assuming we are creating a to-do app, right? We have the delete icon, we have the title. So you can use this title to show the title of the stuff, the item, and then a description. You can also add on tap property because it has on tap, on long press, and all that. So whenever user taps on it, we can show them the details of the items. And we can also wrap this trailing with gesture detector. I taught you about it already, and to delete the items. Okay, so I'm just going to simplify it based on how it is here. We just have our list view. All right, so looking at this now, we have manually, what we did here is just to, like, display the items based on the list that we have here. Okay, this is a static list. We just display them, we look through it, and then display the items. Okay, we can also do something else. Let's say I don't want to look through it, I just want to add the items one after the other. So if we have destiny here now, we have the first list. If you notice, if I want to add another list, another item to this list, I will now copy this widget, add it again, 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 just like that. Okay, it will now be creating. You can see that looping this initial, like creating an initial list before and then looping through it was much more better than having stuffs like this. Okay, that's if you are working with dynamic content. So yeah, but if the list, maybe you just want it to display like a static widget, okay, you can do it like this. It can still work. Maybe you want to display a list tie here. You also want to display an icon. Let's just say icons dot init. You want to display unique items inside. You can do it like this. Okay, you can do it like this. You can create something else, like maybe an image. I think we have an image here already. Let's use our image. Image.assets dot user dummy. So in case you are joining us, consider our advice that you go back to the previous videos because we have already talked about images and all that. Okay, so this is it now. We have images inside this list. One amazing thing about it, you can see automatically scrollable, right? You can see how scrolling it is. It's scrollable automatically. Okay. All right, you can see that it's scrollable automatically. So the next thing we are going to look at now is the grid view. So I just talked about list view. Okay, before I move on to list view, let me show you another way that we can render items in list view. Let's say we have a static list like this. So what we can do here, let me remove, or let's say we want to display this image first. Okay, we want to display an image, then inside here we want to display another list, right? We can use this for loop as well. Okay, and then return our test widget that just says items. Okay, let's just say names dot I. All right, that's how we access items from a list. Yeah, you can see them. You can see the items displaying here. We can use a list view. Let's use a list style for better padding. All right, we can do this as well, right? So we are just displaying unique items inside the list. You can also do something else. Let's say you don't want to use for loop, you can use your spread operator. So you can use the spread operator like this, then use list dot. I talked about these operators in the that class, so go back to it. I will not repeat myself on this. All right, so we have list dot generate. Then we have to specify the length of what we want to generate. You can type it manually, but most times, maybe if you don't know the length or you want the length to be based on this list that we have already created here, you can just call the list name dot length, right? Then we can also have, then inside here, you put your, like the generator, we can put our parentheses, pass in your index, right? And then you return a square bracket, okay? So this index is going to give us access. All right, so my battery is low. This index is going to give us access to access these names individually. So here now we can just do something like final name equal to names, then we access the index, right? Then inside here we can now return name, okay, and save it. Still the same thing, right? So it's still giving us the same result. But let's say now we don't want this list to contain any other item, just this item. What we can do here is to remove this guy, right? And now it's giving us space to add items before and also after this list, right? You can add another item here. So just know that this is how list works. It helps us to render items, right? You can have another item here, okay? But most times, maybe you don't want to use the spread operator. You just want this list to be the only child or the only item inside this list view. We can remove this square brackets and then just represent it by ListView.generate. The reason why this is going to work is because this is a list, and a list view is accepting a list of widgets. So this is also returning a list of widgets for us, okay? So that's why it's working very well. You can also specify reversed. Let's say you want reverse to be true. You can see now subscribe is the last items. If we do reverse, it's going to start from the bottom. This is normally useful when you're working with, when you're building a chat application, right? You want the item, when you're chatting, the items start from the close to the text feed where you send the message and then it keeps scrolling up, right? So this is much more effective, the reverse property. All right, so let's talk about grid view. Grid view is just the same thing. We are just going to change this guy to a grid view, though there are other properties that we need to put, which is a grid delegate. We need to specify our grid delegate. So this grid delegate, I normally use sliver grid delegate with cross-axis count. So with this, it's going to ask us what is the cross-axis count, like the number of children in the cross-axis, okay? In this case, let's just say 2 and save. You can see now we have 1, 2. They are displayed side by side, okay? If we say 3, it's going to show 3 items as the cross-axis. You can see 3 items on that row. If we say 4, it's going to display 4 items on that row, okay? You can say 2, you can say 1, right, to just display them like this, okay? And they are all going to occupy this whole screen, right? You can use it mostly for if you're working with some apps. It just depends on how your use case is, okay? So that's just how it is for that one. There are also other things that you can work with. Cross-axis spacing, you can add spacing between each items. So let's just assume now I wrap this list view with a column, a container, and let me add a color of colors.red, right? You can see how all these items are clustered together. So with the help of spacing, let's say main axis spacing and cross axis spacing, we add, let's say 10 here. If I save it, you can see the spacing has, there's now spacing between the items. We can also say cross axis alignment, cross axis spacing to also add spacing here. So that way you can see the items. You can also decide to wrap this guy with padding because they are all close to the edge, okay? And now we have some spacing. You can also add radius to corner this body and all that, right? That's something you can do with the container widget. Let me just show you guys quickly. We do that. So we have this, we put the color. And one thing you should know, you notice that I removed this color was here, right? But I removed it. The reason is because if I save this, there will be an error. The reason is because if you have a boss decoration, make sure boss decoration will already have color. So if you are working with boss decoration, make sure you don't define the color outside the boss decoration. You should put it inside, except you are not planning to use boss decoration. That's when it's going to work. Okay. Then we have our border radius. Here we can now say border radius of circle. You can see the nice circle there. Okay. So this is it. I've just showed you guys how to display grid view, list view item, and grid view item, right? So let's talk about adding icons and images to list. Then we are now going to talk about dynamic list. Okay. Yeah, so the dynamic list, we are going to be using that approach to build our simple to-do list app. Okay, so here we have adding icons and images to list. So as it is now, instead of us using this list type, we can just say something like images dot asset. I already showed you guys before. Let's just assume that we have many assets here, right? We can use it as the item, but in this case, we don't have those assets. So I can just define the part here, right? Or we can define the part here as a string, or for simplicity, let's just use asset slash dummy.png. Okay. We're going to save this. You can see how the images are displayed. The reason why we're having this red background stuff is because we use the color of red, right? Just to know this time. So how this is looking like a passport photograph, right? So we can also display icons, right? If you don't want images, you can use icon dot, let's just say person. All right. And here we have these little icons displayed in the grid. Okay, so this is how we use grid view and list view. Just a simple widget, right? But it's not going to be simple if you don't practice, right? Just watching it is not enough. So make sure you practice to understand it better. So moving on quickly, let's try to build a to-do app. So in the process of building a to-do app, we are going to see how to implement dynamic lists. So initially, right here, let's say we have a list to do items, okay? And right here, this our item is empty, right? Let's assume this is like our database, all right? Is empty initially. So first, let me use a grid view, or no, let me use a list view. I think list view is much more better in terms of to do app stuff. So what I'm going to do here, I will remove this. I'm going to use ListView.builder, okay? Because this is also working with a dynamic list. So I say ListView.builder. We also have ListView.custom, ListView.supported, right? This one's it adds divider to our widget. So it experiment with both of them to understand it better, okay? As I said before, I'm not going to show you guys everything. So here we have builder. So this builder takes in the same thing as the normal list view, right? So we have the item builder. Remember I told you this was the callback. It's the callback that generates each items on demand. So this item builder takes two things. First, it takes a build context and int, which is the index. So we can just pass context here and index, all right? And then you return it like so. All right, now it's returning null. We can say return hello, and it's going to return random or infinite list of items for us. As we are scrolling, it keeps bringing up new list, right? The reason why it's like that is because we haven't specified any item. So what we can do here is to say item count. We can specify the item count based on the list of items that we have here, or the list that's coming from our database, right? So right here now, what will happen, I'm going to use the to do items dot length, right? In this case, nothing is going to show because the to do item is empty. And what I want to do next is let's say we are going to wrap this guy with a column, because I want to add test form feed so that users will be able to, because we are building the to-do app now, so that users will be able to add. Let's do some spacing. So I'm going to create a test form feed so that users will be able to add their tests. Okay, let me add some decoration to this. And border, outline input border. Let me add label, add to do. All right. All right, so this is cool now. So this list view currently, what we are going to do here is just to use our if statements to do some random check. First, let me see, most times this thing shows error, but let me see if there will be any error inside here. Okay, I think there was an error. Let me bring up my terminal, go to output, debug console, sorry. So there's an error in the build context because of the hash size. So what I usually do here is to wrap this list view with an expanded widget so that it's going to take the remaining spaces, right? So now the error is gone. And then we are going to have a button somewhere under this form feed. So let's grab the button around here. So the button is just going to be to add the to-do once it has been added. And we are going to validate the button as well. So add to do, right? And I just say add to do. And here we are going to put some spacing below here. All right. So now there is no error. Everything is good. So I'm just going to close this terminal because I need more space. All right. So whenever users type, we are going to click on add to do. Once we click on add to do, we are going to update the state. And this list item is going to show what the user have entered already. So let's get started. This to do items for now is empty. So what I'm going to do, I will just check. Let me do some check here, like say, because you can use if statement inside the widget, right? But we can also do using our one line, like let's just say if to do items dot is empty, right? We'll return another widget here that says no to do. All right. So let's save this. You can see now we have no to do showing there because there is no to do items already. So now moving on, what we can do here is to say, we can scroll down to, okay, yeah, we need to first of all validate this to do, right? So right here, I'm going to create my form, my global key, right? Or let me just do it like this, our form key. I talked about global key in our last class where we use it to validate form, okay? Like so. Then from here, since we have our form, test form feed, I'm going to wrap it with a form widget. And inside here, we have our key, and I'll just specify the form key. All right. So here in our test form feed, we have the validator method. So what I'm going to do is to validate if the value, right, if it's empty, right, if it's empty, what I'm going to do is to return, please enter to do. All right, like so. Then we can just return null if there's no error. All right, so this is how we validate the test form field. I talked about this in our last class. All right, so inside here now, we also need something else, right? A way to retrieve the to-do from the list, okay? So here we need our test editing controller, and we need our controller. So we have our test editing controller, right? And tell me, what's the next thing that I need to do now after creating this controller? Where am I going to pass it? Okay, let me know in the comments. Where am I going to pass it? All right, I'm going to pass it inside our test form feed, like so. I'm going to pass the controller like this, so that we'll be able to use it to retrieve the list item from the list, right? Like retrieve the item from the test form field. So right here now, inside our add to do, the first thing I'm going to do is to check if form key.current state is validated. I'm going to do items.add the test controller dot test, and then once I've done that, I'm going to clear this test form field, right? And while I've done that, when I've done that, I'm going to call set state. So the purpose of this set state is to review the item. If you notice, I use a stateful widget for this screen. Assuming I use a stateless widget, I won't be able to call set state, and it's not ideal for functionality like this, like a to-do app. So it's best to use a stateful widget. Remember what I said about stateful widget, right? Someone should remind me on the comments or the chat. Okay. So I might have something for you if you get it correctly. So never can tell. All right. So here now, what we are going to do is to add a new to do. For now, let me just say it's empty. If I click on add to do, you can see the error, the validated error here. Please enter to do. So if I say something like my new to do, right? If I click on add, okay, showing hello. So reason is because I already added item count as 3. So it shouldn't be like that. It should be based on the to do items length. You can see now it's no longer showing us no to do, but rather it's showing us another item. So this should be the length of the to do items, right? And this should be to do items index. All right. So let's save it. You can see now we have my new to do. You can now have something like, hey. Okay. If we add it, you can see hail has been added. Hello. Hello has been added. So this is like a dynamic list based on what items that we have is adding it, appending it one after the other. Okay. So let me show us one order. So this is like everything you need to know for now about ListView and GridView, dynamic list, adding icons and images to lists, and also building a simple to-do list app, which is what we just did here. So let me give you guys a bonus tip for this, like showing you guys how to delete a to-do item. So with the help of this, instead of me using, let me remove this, let me change this guy from this to, let's say, this style. All right. So let's say we have our title here, like so. So this is much more better. No, we are supposed to return this and remove this. All right, so let's say we have this now, and I want to delete the item from this list. So I will have to create, let's say, leading icon. And this is going to be an item button because icon button provides us with onPress property that we can work with. Okay, so with the help of this onPress, we can delete item, right? Then inside here we have our icons dot delete. All right, so just something like this to just give us what we want. Okay, this is not supposed to be leading. Let me use trailing. All right, so what I'm going to do here now is to add a method for deleting. So it's just going to be like a void method. I taught you about creating a function, right, or method. So let's say void delete to do. So basically what this is doing is just to delete it to do for us. Okay, so what we're going to do is to specify the index of what we want to delete. First int index. So we call our set state. We are going to pass the index whenever we call this to do. Then remember list have a remove at index, right? We just call to do list or remove at index based on that particular index. So what I'm going to do here inside this to do items, I'm going to call delete to do, and then I'm going to pass the index. You can see this index is used as an identifier inside the list. Okay, so it's used as an identifier inside the list. I'm going to save that now. If I click on this delete, you see that my new to do has been deleted, and here it has been deleted, and everything has been deleted. It will now show us no to do. We can add new one. Hello. this is the end of today's class. We add, okay? Let me know what you learned today, right? So this is it. We can now add, delete, and all that. It's just a simple to-do application, right? So now I just showed you guys how to work with dynamic list using ListView.builder in Flutter, okay? So your assignment is to do more research about this and also try to implement GridView instead of ListView, all right? Use GridView.builder instead of ListView, all right? So this is the end of today's class, guys. I'm going to see you all in the next class where we're going to be talking about an amazing topic. I think throughout this week, we are not going to have classes like that. So use it to practice. So on Saturday, we'll be having our live section, like where we're going to have a Q&A section on our Telegram channel. I'm going to drop the link in the description for you all to join in case you haven't joined. All right. So see you all next week or by weekend. Yeah. See you all weekend. Our new class is coming up next week. All right. Take care, guys.